I've been coaching men over 30 for 15 years now in terms of getting lean and adding muscle, and I found there's three main ways you can lose fat and build muscle at the same time. So let's get into it in today's video. What's up, guys? Rich here, 50 Brotherhood. And if you're a man, there's probably a strong chance you want to lose some inches around the belly and you want to add some muscle, especially around the arms. Am I right? Well, like I said, I've been coaching for 15 years. And I found there's three main ways you can actually lose fat and build muscle at the same time. I'll tell you how to do it. But for a lot of you, I'm going to tell you the best blueprint on exactly what you should do. So make sure you stick around to the end because we're going in depth in terms of what to do. But for now, let's get the three main reasons on how you can actually lose fat and build muscle at the same time. The very first way that you can lose fat and build muscle at the same time is if you're a beginner or you've taken a long period off from training, let's say for a year or two, which I wouldn't recommend, by the way. But maybe you've heard the term newbie gains, and it's a very real thing. And to give you a bit of an analogy to really paint a picture, think of it this way. Do you remember the very first time like you had caffeine, or maybe you had like a Coke or a coffee, whatever it might have been, and you just felt wired and you felt good? Like the caffeine hit you pretty hard, right? But let's say you have a couple cups of coffee a day and you start getting used to caffeine and it doesn't really hit you as hard. Like for me, I'm up to 4 cups a day. I can have them before I go to bed, I'm gonna pass out. It's kind of the same thing, think of it that way. It's like if you just start off doing it, you're getting some pretty good effects right away, but once you kind of build up a tolerance in terms, you're lifting weights, you're kind of getting the flow of things through nutrition, it starts to level off, and then the more intermediate and advanced you are, it's actually almost impossible to lose fat, build muscle at the same time, almost being the key word. We have 2 more reasons we're gonna get into, but think of it that way. So if you're brand new, or you've taken a long period off in training, you can actually lose fat and build muscle at the same time. But for most men that I train have a little experience, so I typically don't see it very often, although it is possible if you're just starting out. The second way you can lose fat and build muscle at the same time is if you're a genetic freak, for lack of better terms, and you probably know that one guy, right? Like he eats like McDonald's, he eats like crap, and he works out maybe once in a while, and he's like shredded, he's like jacked. Meanwhile, like you're busting your ass at the gym, like you're eating right, you're training properly, and you just can't get half the gains that that guy can get. Well, he kind of falls under this buck right here. If you watch football, think like DK Metcalf, he'd be like that genetic freak, and obviously that's like next level genetic freak. But there seems to be that one in every 100 person who just, 100 person kind of just eats whatever they want and works a little bit, and they can still get crazy results. Now, if you don't fall under this, don't worry. I'm going to tell you a better way to do it. But let's get into reason number 3 next, and I'll tell you the exact blueprint you should and you can do to lose fat and build muscle in a nice, simple structure that you can follow step by step. Before we get to the third reason, because 90% of you are not going to fall under one of these 3 buckets here, and I'm going to tell you what to do in terms of how to lose belly fat and actually add muscle. So we'll get to that in 1 minute. But the third and final way you can lose belly fat and add muscle at the same time is it's going to be steroids. And if you want to skip through this, skip through, of course. I don't take steroids myself. My clients will take steroids. I don't condone them. If you want to take them, I'm not here to judge you. Like, that's fine. But I've never really had experience as a coach training someone who's had steroids, because most men who come to me want to get down about 10 to 15% body fat. They want to feel, look better. They're not trying to become a bodybuilder, right? So if you're not trying to become a bodybuilder, I would probably say you don't want to take them. But again, if you do, that's not enough for me to judge you. But I just want to let you know it is a way you can actually lose fat and build muscle at the same time. Now that we have the 3 reasons done, we're into the good part, because I'm sure you're here, you do want to lose fat and build muscle. Like I said, about 90% of you aren't going to fall really under these categories right here. So we're going to talk about what to do if you just kind of fall under a normal category like myself in terms of how to lose fat and build muscle. So let's get ready for the good stuff. So like I said, it's possible to lose fat and build muscle at the same time, but for the vast majority of us, we're not going to fall under one of these buckets. So I'm going to tell you what to do if you have to lose fat and build muscle, and let's really get into it right now. The very first thing you need to do is lose fat first. And one of the most common mistakes I typically see men making is they add muscle when they have belly fat to lose. And for me, in my opinion, and what I typically do, it's just not a good strategy, and here's why. Any single time you try to add muscle, you're gonna gain fat that comes along with it. And here's another thing as well that you might not know. If you're, let's say, an intermediate, and again, you don't fall under this category, let's say you're intermediate, you've been lifting for 6 months, maybe a year plus, whatever it may be, for every pound of muscle you gain, you can expect to gain 0.5 to a pound of fat that comes on with it, and it's realistic to only gain about a pound of muscle per month. So think of it that way. Let's say you're bulking for 3 months. You gain 3 pounds of muscle. You're probably going to gain about 2, maybe 2.5 pounds of fat that comes along with it. And that's a decent amount, right? Like you gain more weight. You're not seeing a lot of great result in terms of adding muscle. And for a lot of guys, it's just super unmotivating, and you're not going to really see a tangible result that's going to keep you going. Now, if you're losing fat, on the other hand, it's a lot more tangible to see. And let's say you have like 10 to 20, maybe to 30 pounds to lose in X amount of time, let's say 90 days. When you lose the fat, you're gonna notice a difference. You're gonna feel better, you're gonna look better, and it's gonna give you more motivating to keep going because you're actually gonna see that result. So again, a common mistake I typically see is adding muscle before losing fat. What I want you to shift your mindset is lose the fat first, and typically speaking, about 90 days is a good time for me to do that, and you kind of reassess after 9 days. If you only have like 5 pounds to lose, maybe it's a little bit less, of course, but let's say after like 10 to 20, maybe 30 pounds to lose, cut first in the first 90 days, and that's what I want you to focus on once the belly fat is gone. Then we'll get to step number 2, which we're gonna talk about. Then you can start talking about adding muscle. All right, so now I'm gonna give you some tactical tips in terms of what to do and how many calories, for example, you should be having to lose fat, build muscle. I'm not gonna get too in-depth in it because that's not really the point of today's video, but I will tell you, and I'll link another video at the end that you can watch in terms of how to do this. But let's say in terms of losing fat, a good rule of thumb I like to aim for is body weight in pounds times about 10. So you weigh about 200 pounds times by 10, you want about 2,000 calories a day, give or take. Now, if you move a lot, let's say you walk like 12, 15,000 steps a day, you can probably times by 11, and that makes more sense. If you walk about maybe 6,000 to 8,000 steps per day, then body weight in pounds times 10 is probably a good number for you, and you can adjust it depending on how much weight you're either losing or not losing. So that's the first thing to do, and again, you just do this until your belly's down and you feel comfortable in terms of feeling lean. Once this is done, we want to have a transition phase before we go to adding muscle, because the last thing we want to do is like really drop our calories when we're losing fat to having a shitload of calories in terms of adding muscle, because that's when we get, maybe you've heard this before, is the dirty bulk, and that's what we don't want to do. So once the fat's down, we want to transition to a maintenance phase, and a general rule of thumb I like to aim for. So let's say you did body weight in pound times 10 for the fat loss phase. For the maintenance phase, body weight times about 13 is generally a good number. So you bump your calories up a little bit, and you want to do this for about 2 to 4 weeks. If you do it for 4 weeks, even better. I know some people kind of like to get impatient, and which is fine, I totally get that. So you can definitely do it for 2 weeks if you need to, and that's called our maintenance phase. And once our maintenance phase is done, then we want to transition to adding muscle. Now you might be thinking like, okay, how many calories should we be having in terms of adding muscle? Very general rule of thumb I like to start with is your body weight times 15 is 16, and then you adjust from there. Now don't panic, because you are going to gain weight, especially when your calories are lower. So you're definitely going to gain weight the first couple weeks. Just don't get discouraged. But this is why I say lose fat first, because if you start by adding muscle first, believe me, you're going to see extra fat. You might see a little extra muscle, but you're going to get discouraged in the process, which is why we want to cut fat first, do a maintenance phase for a little bit. That way we don't get to that dirty bulk. Once we start acclimatizing to those calories, then we can really start focusing on adding muscle. So to kind of recap this here, guys, I'll make more tactical tips in terms of like how to actually have muscle on a future video, and I'll link a video in terms of more tactical tips in terms of, lose the belly and lose the love handles, but that's not really the point of today's video. So to kind of recap this, if you're kind of falling under the 10%, if you're a true beginner, or like I say, you maybe take a long period off for training, which again, don't do ideally. You can lose fat, build muscle at the same time for sure. How much, it's impossible to say. It's going to vary from person to person because it depends on number 2. If you're a genetic freak, again, we don't want one guy who can just lose fat, build muscle, and it's kind of annoying. You hate that guy. Not just joking, but you get what I mean. And the third thing I said is steroids. I don't recommend this personally, but again, if you want to go that route, I'm not here to judge you. And like I said, for most of us, we're gonna fall under this category. Probably at least 90% of us. And if you have fat to lose and muscle to gain, drop the belly first, go to the maintenance phase, add muscle after, and I guarantee that's the best way to do it. You're gonna feel better, you're gonna have more confidence, you're gonna look good, and your swag back. So if you guys enjoyed this video, please give me a like, please subscribe. I'm gonna go more in depth in terms of how to add muscle as well in future videos. And I hope you will enjoy that. And I hope you enjoyed today's video. And thank you so much for sticking around to the end. We'll talk soon.